Greetings, friends, and welcome back to 7 Science Questions and Why They Matter. In this video, we'll take a look at the next body of evidence that proves that the Earth cannot be millions or billions of years old. Today, we'll discover that our own sun clearly reveals the fact that Darwinistic evolution could never have occurred in the way that it is being presented to us in today's secular classrooms and all over the media. But before we do that, let's do a brief review of the two very different timelines or chronologies that scientists today believe in and adhere to. Isn't it fascinating that these two theories regarding the history of our world are in radical opposition to each other, and yet nearly 100% of all scientists adhere to one or the other of these ideas? Okay, let's take a quick look at them. Begin with Dr. Luke, who was the author of the Gospel of Luke and of the book of Acts in the New Testament, gives us an unbroken genealogy from Adam through Christ in the 3rd chapter of his Gospel. That genealogy lists 76 generations, and in about 50 years per generation, that gives us 3,800 years from Adam to Christ. If we add 2,018 years from the birth of Christ till today, Luke gives us a total of 5,818 years, or we round that off to about 6,000 years from creation till today. Next, as we also very well know, secular science gives us an entirely different chronology for the history of our world. Through the methods of radiometric dating, naturalistic uniformitarianism, and maybe throw in some stratification analysis from the many layers of strata from the Grand Canyon, for instance, secular science gives us an estimate of the age of the Earth at 4.6 billion years. This is 769,000 times longer than Luke's history of the Earth. Now, let's take a quick look at our sun and see what it can teach us about the history of our universe. Did you know that the sun's core is a nuclear fusion reaction which generates the incredible intensity of light and heat that warms our planet some 93 million miles away? Like all nuclear fusion reactions, our sun is slowly getting smaller and growing hotter and brighter as the reaction burns through its limited supply of fuel. The Boyle Observatory in England has been keeping careful records of the sun's diameter for 300 years. While the rate of shrinkage fluctuates some, direct observation shows that the sun is shrinking roughly 5 feet an hour on average. Now, this might not seem like much for an object that measures 864,000 miles across, but it does mean that the sun would have been significantly bigger in the distant past. Now, let's take a short journey backward through time and see how these facts would affect the credibility both of Luke's timeline from the New Testament and the 4.6 billion year timeline that is required by the theory of evolution. As we move backward in time from today, the first milestone we reach is 6,000 years ago. It is at this point in time when the Bible tells us that the universe was created. Because of the very slow rate of change in the sun's reaction, this date for creation presents no problems for life on Earth, and the science here works just fine. Then we'll travel back to a point only 20 million years ago. Assuming the rate of change in the size of the sun has not changed significantly, at this point in time, the surfaces of the Earth and the sun are touching each other. Oops! I hope everyone had a fireproof suit and lots of air conditioning. Friends, because of the size of the sun, it is impossible that life could have begun on Earth anywhere close to this far back, even though we are now at only less than 0.5% of the timeline claimed by secular evolutionists. Next, since secular scientists are constantly telling us that the first forms of life miraculously jumped into existence 3.5 billion years ago, let's see how things would have looked on Earth. At that point in time, the Earth would have been entirely inside of the sun and would have been burned to a crisp. That's right. So what if somehow the sun had not been larger in the past? Well, because the sun's reaction would have been much cooler, it is a fairly straightforward calculation to determine that the Earth's temperature would have been 16 to 18 degrees Celsius cooler than it is today. This means that the average temperature on the Earth's surface would have been between -1 and 3 degrees Celsius, which is right at the freezing point of water. Clearly, life could never have spontaneously jumped into existence under these freezing conditions. Friends, the slow increase in the size and the amount of heat generated by the sun presents a huge problem for the timelines required by the theory of evolution. But if the Earth came into existence only 6,000 years ago, as Dr. Luke tells us, the increasing intensity of the sun is too slow to present problems for life on Earth. Once again, we see that real science points us directly to the biblical chronology of the Earth, and that secular ages of the Earth, such as millions and billions of years, are fraught with significant scientific roadblocks. So now our scoreboard reads Luke 3, secular science 0. And since the Bible turns out to be historically accurate and scientifically credible in every verse, isn't it about time you thought about taking another look at its message of the Father's incredible love for mankind, which includes the offer of eternal life and a second chance at life forgiven? Until next time, live long and prosper.
Live long and prosper. Image of Sirach.
Ain't no sunshine when she's gone. It's not warm when she's away.